Welcome to all my students. This is video number 13 and I believe that you guys have watched my first up to 12th episode of Hail Mary, and in this episode I would like to explain how did we catch the Euro JPY move of 2 to 300 pips and even gold buy of almost 2 to 300 pips. With just the setups that I've been teaching you guys, I want to backtest with you tonight in terms of how do we find the setup of H4 and how do we find the setup in M5 and M15. These are key points that you guys need to understand and need to learn. So tonight I'll be teaching you every single thing based on the data that has happened in this week for Euro JPY and gold. Both has given us 200 to 300 pips, a solid setup from a H4, and then went down to M5 and M15. There was a buy setup that was clear. So let's get into it. For today is going to be a 15 minutes video, nothing more, and it's going to be very compact. So let's start. So the first pair that we're going to go today is understanding Euro JPY. So let's see. Euro JPY has, let's start off with this area over here, alright? So for Euro JPY, I want to show you starting from the first engulfing over here. Let's call this as our failed engulfing. So when we have our failed engulfing over here, I have identified there was also first engulfing cell over here. When changes to a purple zone. So when this is going to be our first engulfing cell, I'm going to mark it as engulfing cell 1. So after creating engulfing cell 1, all we need to do is to wait for price to enter the zone again and close as our second engulfing cell, which is over here. So when this happened, I've marked this zone as a potential H4 selling zone. So what would I do right after this creation of a setup? So when we have the failed engulfing over here, we have the engulfing number 1 over here, and we also have the engulfing number 2 over there. So that means that we have created a sell setup based on the current time frame, which is H4. So H4 we have H4 we have identified a sell setup. So based on the teachings that I've taught you guys, after H4 has found a setup, we need to look at smaller time frame setups of M15 or M5. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. Once we have found the setup, I will put a line over here, and we're going to be focusing on prices from this moment only, because then we need to be looking for M15 or M5 setup for the sell. So we can directly go to M15 and start looking for potential sell setups. So what we're going to do is that we have to be looking at the left, because these are our guide when we were taking our trades. We need to find the same thing that what we found in H4, which is first, number 1, we need to find engulfing fail. We need to also find the engulfing cell, number 1. And then next, we also need to find engulfing cell, number 2. So that's what we're going to be looking for in M15. So let's mark the first zone over here. Where is our engulfing fail? It can be this. Can it be? Yes, it can be this. So if this is our first engulfing fail, let's change it to a gray zone. Let's focus on this area over here. So if we take this as our engulfing fail, where is our engulfing number 1? So engulfing number 1 can be this, or it can be this, or it can also be this. So there are 3 potential zones for engulfing fail with an engulfing cell. So all we need is just for price to enter the zone, enter the right zone, and close as an engulfing cell. So what happened is that it respected the second zone over here. It came into the second zone, so our first zone is broken, and it only came into our second zone, and it closed as an engulfing cell. So again, what do we find over here? We have found an engulfing fail plus an engulfing cell plus an engulfing cell for M15 time frame. So we have found the setup for H4, and we also have found the setup for M15 currently. So next, any retracement back into this zone is a potential sell. So that's how we got from here, the price dropped all the way, maybe around 30 to 40 pips. Then price retrace into the zone again. If it actually breaks this level, so you have to mark where is our engulfing fail. It should not go above our engulfing fail. So if we take this as our valid engulfing fail, it should not close above this zone. So this is still respecting the zone, but our friend over here, as soon as it broke above this level, our engulfing fail and our setup for M15 has now been broken. So we need to find new M15 setup for the continuation of the sell inside this area. So let's look for new selling zones in here. So the first thing that you need to find is an engulfing fail. In this case, you can take this as your engulfing buy that failed. So I'm going to mark this as my first engulfing failed zone. And in this engulfing failed zone, where is going to be our first engulfing sell? So this potentially could be our first engulfing sell. Second, where is our next potential engulfing sell? It can be also this over here. So we have two zones right now. So the first zone that we have is this. So price has made a breakout. Price made a pullback into the zone. So monitor price in the zone. Did it close as an engulfing sell number 2 over here? In this case, it did not, because this current red candle did not close below the low of the green candle. So it means that it is still not creating a sell. So we need to wait for new breakouts to happen. So we maintain and use the same engulfing fail while we have new engulfing sell above. So we have this engulfing sell, price made a breakout, then it has a potential pullback. This is the potential pullback. We need price to close as a sell in the zone. So price came back into our engulfing 1 zone, closed as a sell over there. So when this thing happened, you can enter a sell straight away over here with your stop loss above the zone over here. So let's just say that you sold over here. Stop loss can be around 29 pips, but this would be shared more in the next chapter regarding where should you put your stop loss, where should you put your break even, or even your take profit. For today, I just want to show you that with a H4 setup, with an additional setup confluence of M15, we can get this drop all the way down based on a H4 plus M15 setup. Okay, so this is the first example. When price respects our zone and price is in the right zone, closing inside the right zone, we see a huge drop down to our take profit at 100 pips. And remember, our stop loss is only, it was only, I think, from this moment 30 pips, 40 pips. So your take profit should at least be double, which is around 80 or 100 pips. So first setup success. Euro JPY drop all the way down, drop, and along the way, look at this. Why did it drop even more from here? So we need to always ask ourselves, like, we need to know why did the drop happen, because if you do not ask, you do not learn. So ask yourself, give yourself reasons why did the drop happen. So look at it. Is there any reason for it? This is going to be our fail. So the same thing again, look for your first engulfing sell. This is your potential first engulfing sell, and so that's your first engulfing sell. Price made a breakout, price pulled back into the zone, but it actually closed above than our high. So this is not our engulfing 1 anymore. So the latest engulfing 1 for now is only this candlestick. So this could just be pullback breakouts, and price can still retrace into the zone to create new setups for our M15 sell. But in this case, price drop, do not be surprised, there isn't an M15 setup, but that might be M5 setup somewhere around here. So let's try and look for M5 setups. For M5, I'm going to change my box to orange. So orange, let's look for our first engulfing fail. So this is our first engulfing fail over here. Red and green. This was a buy candle, but then broke below. So we are done with that phase. We have identified our engulfing field. Next, where is our first engulfing cell? So it can be this candle over here, and it can also be this candle over here. So let me explain to you why is it so. This is our engulfing field. So I'm gonna mark this again, engulfing field M5. So in this engulfing field M5, we have two potential. This is going to be our first potential engulfing one. This is going to be our second potential engulfing one. First and second potential engulfing cell 1. So then, after identifying your engulfing field and your potential zones, you need to identify where is the pullback going to be. So this is the breakout to the downside. Then you need to wait for price to retrace into your zone again. It's very important for you to wait for price to retrace. So as you can see, price retraced into that zone, and then it closed as a engulfing cell. So what we have over here is that we have another complete setup of M5. Now we have the second cell engulfing. So then we have a complete setup. We have the engulfing field, we have the engulfing cell number 1, we also have the engulfing cell number 2. So as you can see, any retracement up into the zone is still for the sell, as long as price does not break above and our stop loss is just higher than these zones. So let's just say that your stop loss is higher than this area. So if you sell over here, for example, as soon as the candle closed, you can sell and you would have gotten this 20 to 30 pips down before price retracing again above. Stop loss can be around 32 pips. So price retraced into the zone again, respected our engulfing field over here because price did not close above. Price retraced, but price did not break that level. So price needs to stay below, and it did actually stay below this level. So that's why price from that moment onwards, we can derive that this is an M5 setup for the sell, and that is why price dropped even further. So now we have gotten the M15 sell over here. We also have gotten the M5 sell over here, all the way down. So from EJ, we have gotten two cells from a H4 setup. So do you guys see what a H4 setup can do? It can really give you a lot of pips. So from this moment down is already 200 pips. To our second cell setup is also another 170 pips. So total we have gotten almost 365 pips down based on two setups. So this is for Euro JPY. So now let's go to gold. Gold is something interesting as well because we have identified this setup and I have notified you regarding this setup for gold. So now let's start from scratch. Gold over here. This was a few days ago. So what I have identified from here is a H4 setup. So my engulfing field is this purple box. So I'm gonna mark this as my engulfing field. So when we have identified our engulfing field, so the cell has failed. So what happened is that this is going to be my first engulfing buy. I'm going to change this to purple. Okay, so this is my engulfing buy, my first engulfing buy. So what we need is price to break out from the zone, made this sideways, and then pull back into the zone. So when price pull back into the zone, we have identified this. This is another engulfing buy. So this is our first engulfing buy. I'm gonna mark this as engulfing buy 1. And then what we have is combination of engulfing buy 1 with engulfing buy 2. So when we have engulfing buy 1 with engulfing buy 2 over here, being supported with H4 engulfing fail over here, We have a complete buy setup. So once I have identified the complete buy setup, I'm just gonna put a line after the confirmation. So right after the line, all I want to do is to look for M15 and M5. These are the two setups that I need to be looking forward to. After a confirmation from H4, straight away only focus on M15 and M5. These are the two time frames that you need only. So then what I've realized is that there was no setup that was formed around this zone. There wasn't any at all. I was waiting for it, but it did not happen. Then I was waiting for M5, also looking for potential buying zones. They did not give me an engulfing fail to an engulfing buy to an engulfing buy. So I did not trade in this zone. Then what happens next is that I was waiting for potential of it creating a buy setup over here. So then let me see if there was any. So let's try and find where is the potential engulfing fail. The potential engulfing fail that I can find is we cannot take this. So if I mark this like this, it's invalid, because when price breaks lower, we expect price to go further, and it should not drop lower than this zone. So as you can see, candles close below, so this is not a valid engulfing fail. So the valid engulfing fail that I can find is here. 1, 2, 3 here. So here I'm gonna change this to orange. So what do you see over here? This is our engulfing cell, and in the same time this is the cell that has broken above. So I'm gonna mark this as our engulfing fail. So once price has created engulfing fail, next thing that we need to look for is an engulfing buy. So I've identified this as my engulfing buy over here. Engulfing buy number 1. So then I was waiting for price to make a breakout. It went all the way up, and then it came back into the zone. Bear in mind that we have confirmation based on H4 that was due, I think it was created maybe 3 to 4 days ago, which is what we have seen earlier. So that's why I was looking for buys and buys and buys based on the H4 setup. So price came back into the zone, and then it created this over here, engulfing buy in the engulfing buy 1 zone together with the engulfing failed zone. So this over here has become our engulfing buy 2. Holy shit, it's too bright. So when we have found a setup like this, it means that we have found a buying setup based on M5. So any retracement for price can be for the sell. So then you would ask me, look at this setup over here. We have the fail, we also have the sell to the sell over here. So there is the buy that we have found over here, and we also have this setup which is for the sell. And if you ask me which is the setup that I would take, so obviously you know that H4 has just closed as a buying setup last few days. So that's why it's stupid to take the sells knowing that H4 has just created the buy setup. So that's why we always have to look at the bigger picture. Always remember looking at H4 daily, weekly, monthly is very important. Because if all the time frame wants to buy, you just need to follow the direction for the higher time frames. So that's why this setup was formed. As soon as this setup was formed, this is my setup. It will be like this, something like this. So stops would be roughly 20 pips. Confirmation would have, so that's my confirmation, and take profit would have been somewhere around there. So anything that retraces into the red box is for the buy based on the setup of H4 and M15. Sorry, M5. Easy. So this topic today is to to make sure you understand the power of H4 with M5 and M15. Alright guys, so thank you for watching. I will send you guys more videos in the future, but for now, please practice your H4 M5 together with your daily and H1 M30. Right? So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you guys.